Hey, good morning. It is now it is June 25th, 2026. It is now 10:30 a.m. and I've been trying since last night to record a video for my website, for my new website called thomasjungauthor.com, and I have a hard time doing it because every time I start a video I start acting the same way I used to act when I had to speak, before an audience. I basically forget everything I want to say. But so now I'm doing more like a sort of freestyle video I want to present to you. So I'm gonna think about, ChatGPT advised me to write, cue cards and to read off those cue cards and to give me some orientation, something I can, work with. So what I'm now trying to do is I will try to, make those cue cards with you. So with my first video, I want to introduce, not only my website, thomasjungauthor.com, but also the first essay collection, the first collection of essays I want to publish. I want to, publish on a whole range of issues, but but my first issue will be called Deconstructing Pride. And it's basically, I would call a critique, not of homosexuality, but of, sort of the culture and the identity that has grown around it. And I will also, say things about how sort of that culture has evolved, what I like about it and what I don't like about it, and what I find problematic about it, and why I saw myself never fitting into that culture. And I think that's what the essays are mainly about. I also made a chart, what do they call it, a mind map earlier today. I will look it up now. Let's see. And it basically gives an overview of the themes I want to discuss, the sort of core distinctions I make, one of the the foundational questions that are being asked, and what are my motives to write about these issues, and so let me first start by saying something about the sort of the basic questions I'm trying to answer. The first question would be like, what is sort of lost when sort of people start building an entire identity around their sexuality? What is problematic about that? If you could say, well, I don't like my other identities, I don't feel comfortable in those, so therefore my sexual identity becomes important. And you can tell it's a problem because many people say things like, yeah, okay, gay identity is important to me, but not that important. So there's also often a little game going on. Okay, I identify as being gay, but it's only like this small part, and I don't like the over-identifiers. I don't like the the professional gay people. I don't like people who make it their entire identity. But nobody ever wonders, maybe there's something wrong with the identity itself. And I think that is a question I'm trying to answer. What is also one of the things that is what I find so problematic about the identity is the aspect of the sort of in-your-face visibility that I find is sort of difficult to understand, because it is I don't know, it feels intrusive, it feels, you know, so it's sort of a, you know, trying, there's a fake element about it. There's, you know, this element about, okay, all the sexual display, you know, in which the world celebrates itself as, you know, sort of sexually open and, you know, sort of boundary pushing, you know, sexual boundaries within society. But I will have an essay entirely devoted to this topic. It will not be the next one I'm going to publish next on Sunday, but the one after, and it will be about some other you know, some other things driving all that, you know, sort of in your face sexual display. And that is, you know, I would argue, is a certain narrow-mindedness within that world. And that narrow-mindedness is fed by the fact that, you know, once people start, you know, sort of adopting the gay identity, what they call come out, it is sort of assumed that these people are somehow sort of sexually liberated, at least, you know, more sexually liberated than the average person, let's say. But that is often not the case. And that leads, you know, to all sorts of problems. And so I'm going to devote an entire essay to that subject. Another problem with the identity is that that it is presented as if it is this sort of coherent belief system, and to some extent it is. You know, there is some, you can identify a certain coherent belief system. Okay, and some people, you know, feel close to, others feel, you know, distant. And you see, and I'm trying to identify what that belief system is, what its core is, and what is behind it. You know, you can tell, you know, because, you know, a lot of critics, you know, who are not gay like to speak about things like, you know, the gay agenda. I'm trying to, by which I don't mean what they mean by it, but there is an agenda behind, you know, all this, behind, you know, the slogans, you know, what is it, pride, the word pride, you know, the what are the slogans, you know, love is love, you cannot choose who you love, you know, I don't know, we all know them. And I also want to make the point that, you know, you can think very differently about homosexuality. Homosexuality is not the same thing as the gay identity. You see, someone who says I'm gay basically says I have adopted the gay identity. And that is not necessarily what the word gay traditionally meant. What it traditionally meant was a certain set of attributes many homosexuals had, which gave them a certain, which made them different, stand out, gave them a certain edge, maybe even a certain advantage. But that is not what the identity does is sort of, it assumes that every homosexual who comes out and says, okay, I'm gay, automatically has those, you know, attributes. That is somehow expected. And I think it's also a little presumptuous. And I think there is also some value in the fact of keeping homosexuality separate from the gay identity, or see these things, keep seeing these things as two, you know, separate things. Because I have met many homosexuals who, despite of this sort of liberal society and despite having liberal-minded parents, feel uneasy about, you know, constantly having to declare their sexuality to other people. You know, they often don't even have a problem with their sexuality, but they have a problem with identifying as gay. And that's what I'm going to write about. You know, sort of, you know, they don't want to be associated with the identity and the ideas, you know, surrounding, you know, the sort of rainbow ideology, which in my view is becoming more and more, you know, like a cult. You know, it has cult-like structures, and I will try to, you know, you know, figure out what these elements are, what they consist of. I also make some very core distinctions. I mean, I think I mean, you should see the collection basically as a collection of texts. Every text contains about, what is it, about 10,000 words. It's basically a chapter from a book. But you can also read the chapters sort of as a loose chapter. You don't need to read the whole book to understand, you know, the chapters. They each have their own theme, and they're all also recurring themes. So you can read all the chapters separately, and the chapters are sort of, they're not even really essays because they're not short. So they're basically chapters or texts written sort of in this essayistic style. And I think the central chapter will be a text I've already published. It's called Homosexuals and Gays, and that's why I put that one up first. And it is not as polished as the other one I have ready, because, you know, I set myself, you know, I have, you know, sort of a deadline, so I will need to work on some parts of the chapter to come. So it is not, well, the arguments are laid out and the distinctions are made, but it's the writing could have been a bit more elegant and a bit more, yeah, a bit better. And in that article, in that chapter, I'm describing how I came to see homosexuality, how I saw it at first, and how that sort of a little bit evolved, and what ideas from others I adopted, because that felt close to how I feel about my homosexuality and about, you know, the gay identity. So I felt close to homosexuals who were sort of open about their sexuality, but sort of rejected the gay identity. And in today's culture, it is said that, you know, so that is not possible. You know, every homosexual has to automatically adopt the gay identity, and that is something I question. And in order to do that, in Homosexuals and Gays, I have to make certain distinctions. One distinction is that between same-sex attraction, sexual attraction, and homosexuality, because you know, I think every man has the capacity to experience same-sex attraction, but that does not mean he's a homosexual. A homosexual is basically someone who is exclusively attracted to people of the same sex. And yes, that is not a choice. That is how that person has developed, or I don't know. And so that is not something you can change or easily change, or, you know, you can say, okay, I'm not engaging in homosexual acts. That is possible, but, you know, there is no choice in feeling those, you know, attractions. And then we have, and homosexuality is not the same as, you know, the gay identity. These three things should be separate. Then we have the separation between gay and, or sort of, the term gay is more and more replaced by the word queer, which is a word, you know, which basically means the same. I mean, it's basically, queer is basically just, you know, what the what gay used to mean, but then for more people, even people who do not see themselves as homosexuals, you know, what you would call the gender people. Now, I don't belong to the category of homosexuals that say, well, you know, first we had this wonderful gay world and this wonderful, you know, gay culture and wonderful gay identity, and now those, you know, those horrible transsexual people and all those other weirdos, you know, are ruining it. I don't believe that. You know, there are some things about these people I actually really like. For example, they want to keep what, you know, what was associated by being gay, you know, sort of alive. And I think this is sort of the you know, sort of the part of protesting, sort of the, you know, sort of certain societal injustices and you know, problems. If they do it in the correct way, I'm not sure, but this is what they want to sort of keep alive, and that is what I like about them. You know, because the problem, one of the other problems I have with the gay world is also that, you know, it is in a way a very narrow-minded world. You know, because okay, there are gay people that are sort of, that are not narrow-minded, but the culture in a way is, because you see, being a homosexual is in itself a little, you know, sort of narrow-minded sexually. I mean, you're basically only attracted to people of the same sex, and they claim a certain sexual openness by, you know, sort of publicly, you know, flaunting their and displaying their all sorts of kinks, and, you know, talking about stuff like why they go cruising and stuff like that. But in that sort of talking about it, in that exhibitionism, lies also a certain like narrow-mindedness. You know, sort of sexual openness becomes sort of mandatory, you know, and I think that has gone a little bit too far. If you like go out, you know, into the bushes and cruise, why do you need to talk about it? As a you know, people also act like as if this were this sort of big taboo, as if sex is sort of, you know, this big taboo issue, which it is, you know. So I'm gonna talk about that. Yeah, so that was it for today.